This is Patricia Windrow at the Cable Easel at Viacom. It's a program dedicated to painting and drawing. Today I'm going to be painting from a monitor that was set up at a particularly chosen scene of mine, and as it is in the background, and it's going to be as if I was actually out there. This is an innovation thought up recently in order to do this program, that if you can't go outside to paint with a camera crew out there, then you simply bring the monitored tape inside. And it's going to be quite a remarkable series of landscape paintings because of that very reason, that we can actually work from life. You'll notice in here that the wind is blowing, birds are flying, there are dogs running around, the tide is going out. And so watch very carefully. I'm going to be now trying to work rather quickly to get as much into this as possible. I'm going to be mixing the sky color. As you can see from the subject matter, it is going to be kept at its absolutely most simple rendering, because the skies should be kept simple. As soon as you start trying to do clouds and so on, for a beginner, it is a dangerous piece of business. So I mix this color entirely, completely on the palette, and then I apply it and then smooth it out with a brush. Here, I've got it all mixed here on the canvas, and I'm getting it just as pale as possible, maybe a little bit paler than what the monitor has. Well, let's just keep it as close as possible. And mix it thoroughly on the palette. Do not rely upon mixing it on the canvas. It'll give you streaks, which are the first sign of the amateur. So mix it thoroughly on the palette so that there are no streaks, and then apply it immediately with nice, large, generous strokes. Don't try to smooth them out. The smoothing out comes with the brush later. So as you can see, with a knife, you can get good sharp lines. You can get right down, go a little bit past it. I assume, of course, to interrupt for just a moment with this palette knife thing, is that the people who want to paint and draw have some knowledge of drawing and layout. A drawing class would be an entirely different set of series. This is a series on how to draw first and then paint. As you can see, the sky can be put in a rather efficient, quick manner, which is also one of the main ingredients in landscape painting, is to work as quickly as possible on the objects that don't move, namely the sky, but also because the light changes so quickly. One should never count on being outdoors and do a landscape painting for more than 3.5 hours, because the light will change too drastically. Now, I have here a fan brush. Heard other times from other programs. It is, but this is not a sable one. This is a synthetic one, a bristle one, and it's rather wonderful and has a lot of body to it. All I'm going to do with it is to smooth out the knife marks, because the object of my painting is realism, and it's okay to have brush marks showing a good deal of the time, but in skies, I beg you, if you are going to be working in tandem with me, or remembering what I do, keep the skies as smooth as possible, because, well, that's what they are. They're smooth and lovely and an uninterrupted background for whatever you've chosen to do in the foreground. So this is a scene in Setauket, out down at West Meadow Creek, and the camera was set up on this particular scene, which is known as Shipman's Point, and it's a favorite scene for painters. Now, I'm going to save some of the sky color on my palette to be working in the water. As you can see, the water is almost a direct image. This water is a direct reflection, as well as the house, a direct reflection of the house and the sky and so on. But you work from the distance to the foreground. Now I'm going to transfer myself to a brush, and I'm going to be starting to work on the background. Backgrounds are paler than foregrounds because they are far away and one loses color. The background of this could be called sort of monotone. It is a combination of greens and oranges and worked in a very, well, a little touch of mauve is going to help to reduce the intensity of that green. And the background should be kept as filmy and as indistinct because the focus, which is what the problem about landscape painting is focus, not just of objects, but also of color. And objects in the distance are paler than they are in the foreground. Well, atmosphere takes care of all that. The fact that we live on a planet that has atmosphere causes the distance things to be interrupted with all the muting tones of the atmosphere. So this ridge way off in the distance here must be kept very pale. Then when you come towards the foreground, you will see that the distant ridge will overlap that distance picture, and then the distant rim, and then in the foreground we have those wonderful cedar trees that are found, well, not exclusively on Long Island, but they sure are an identifying motif for the beaches of Long Island. They are both on the North Shore and on the South Shore beaches of the island. And boy, when you see those cedar trees on a long, flat space, I don't care if you're in China, you'll know that somewhere along the line that smacks of Long Island. So with this very quick indication of what the background is, we can continue smartly towards the middle ground. Now, the middle ground, according to the monitored reference material, which is what I call this because it is actually, I'm referring to it, is the distance, the middle ground. And the light is striking the middle ground, and that can be done with a great deal of freedom and a lot of lightness, because when the sun hits that meadow, it becomes, well, it becomes very, very pale and very brilliant. So if you stick that middle ground in and you make it go under the house, because you can see through it. The house is on stilts, and you see this middle ground underneath the house through it. You prepare that first. The houses in the background, way off in the distance, should be indicated only very slightly to tell you that there is other human habitation back there, and that those little beach houses are in fact visible, even when you're way down on the beach by the water, as this picture tells you. But those houses must be indicated, otherwise what do you do with this background? That ridge is no longer there. So we indicate the houses with, just the slightest kind of patterning to show you that there is a roof line, and that there are other bushes back there. Here's another house just peeking its way off down Trustees Road, which is what the name of that place is. And snuggled between there are little indications of trees. And as you can see, I'm being very interpretive. It's way off in the distance. You wouldn't agonize over a lot of detail because it's, after all, far away. In order to see it, you have to really squint. And wonderfully, I'm working without glasses, which I think that's already an innovation. Here is the shadow side of this building. And that building is just as important, really, in its own strange kind of unfocused way as the one in the foreground. It has its own shadow, it has its roof line, and so forth. Now, as I said, we're going to be working towards the foreground. The next part that I'm going to be working on is the darkness of that roof, which is somewhat it's got blue in it, and it's got gray, and it's altogether sort of dark, and it's really sort of indistinct. You're not quite sure what that color is. The shingle people probably have a name for it, but when you're out there in this particular light, it's kind of a dark, nothing color. Maybe, if you had to give it a name, it would probably be charcoal mauve or something. And if you do sketches and you need to just do color words, so that if you are going to work this back at home, if it suddenly starts to rain or thunder or wind or something, you should have a verbal color notation. So charcoal mauve is probably a good idea. That's a good term. I'm working with a brush that is, this is a fake bristle. It's a nylon bristle, perfectly adequate at this point to do these small areas. And the roof line of this four-building is the same color as the roof line of the other one. So, rinsing my brush, keeping it nice and clean. As you can see, I'm going to make sure that I get this message across at every single show, that I clean my brushes in order to keep the paintings clean. It's logical that you always keep your brushes clean. Now, that building is an old building, and it's got all sorts of different kinds of old colored shingles on it because it's been repaired a number of times, and it needs to have that particular element of it shown. But this was early in the morning, and the sunny side of the building turned out to be almost white because the sun was striking the old asbestos shingles, and they appeared to be quite brilliant and very white. So without any, you just pull the white right out of the tube and put it right on that sunny side of the building. And the sunny side of the building is also on this side. Yeah, that's logical. The sun's coming from here, from there, and both sides of the protruding buildings are going to catch the light at on the same side. Now, as I progress and change my brush to keep the colors clean, I'm going to darken the shingles a little bit on this side, put a touch of mauve in there because that's what is going to give me the sort of darkish, worn-looking color of those shingles. The lady who lives in here, she's a friend of mine. She spends the summers in here, and they're continually repairing those old asbestos shingles that keep falling off. But that's the charm of this place. I have painted this place for an awfully long period of time, and I probably have painted it more often than any other motif I know, and so I'm very familiar with it. And I'm familiar with the fact that the shingles fall off, and every summer they are diligently and lovingly replaced somehow, but never always the same color. So the house has a kind of a mind of its own. It changes as the years go by. Inside, it's very charming. There's a hammock and many plants, and the lady who lives in there is very artistic, and she makes sure that because she lives over the water, that her bedroom floor doesn't have anything like slippers and things left on it, because when the tide comes up rather quickly, her bedroom floor gets wet. Something that a lot of people would not be able to stand, but she's dealt with it and loves the house and cares for it, and we have laughed about her wet bedroom slippers for years. I've also immortalized her laundry, which hangs from a line right outside here, and many times she has said, "Oh, I wish you hadn't put my pink towels in there." Anyway, here we have just the silly little comments about the human element of this particular house. As you can see, we have to progress rather quickly because the shortness of this program does not allow me to dwell too long on any given subject. I must get this kind of thing done very quickly for you to understand how you can resolve the problem of a painting this complex in a short period of time. Other times I'm going to take longer, and I'm going to do these landscape paintings in 2 stages, to be able to do half one week and then half the next, just for clarity, because if there is too much that is left unsaid, then it is a pointless lesson. Okay, we have little windows here, 1, 2, 3, which fortunately and very intriguingly are going to be reflected in the water in a little while. The indication of a window here is important, and the indication of a door is important right here. While we break for a moment, I will continue in just a second, so hang on. working our way from the background towards the foreground, which is the element of landscape painting. So, dealing with this middle ground shoreline, it is a wonderful sort of a vibrant kind of sienna-toned arrangement which comes when the tide goes out and leaves this dark kind of residue of shoreline and beach and so forth. This is, of course, partly beach and partly meadow. I like to see the darkness here because it's going to give an awful lot of brilliance to the very pale waterline which will run right up against it. And the best way and most effective device to get brilliance is to put dark. So there's no light without dark, and that's not biblical, and it certainly is a good philosophy. But in painting, it's absolutely essential to remember that in order to get something very bright, you must paint something very dark. So here is the darkness prepared to receive the very light color of this still water. That is, I need some more white. Hang on while I squeeze some of my trusty white here onto the palette. The basis of all painting is a white color. So remember that when you buy the colors, buy small tubes if you want to, but always buy a great big tube of white. Now here comes the brilliance of that middle ground water. And as you can see, the minute you put the pale against the dark, it becomes shiny. And the point of painting still water is to make it as shiny as it is. The shininess comes with the introduction of the dark. Also, water tends to become darker as it comes toward you, as most objects become darker as they come toward you. So I'm blending with the brush to give that water that luminescent color quality that you can see that it go when it blends from dark to light. In here are the puddles. I'm going to put them in now because the darkness of the sandbar is going to be put over that. So, rinsing my brush once again, I'm now going to be showing you rather quickly how to put the pilings on that building, which is one of the characteristics of the whole painting. As you can see, these pilings are set right over the creek. And they are the things that give the building its charming quality. I doubt very much that any building department would ever give permission to build a thing like this again. This is a vintage which is, once this is gone, you will never see it again. These are old, some rotten, but most of them are very, very good and secure pilings that were put in probably over 75 years ago. And needless to say, because of that, they are wiggly and they are crooked and they go off at an angle, but they do the job. They support the house. And here is the quick way that you can solve the problem of the pilings and the shadow underneath the house, which is cast by this house. All the underneath part of the house is in darkness because the light does it. It simply casts a shadow underneath this structure. Going out into the water, because it's low tide, this darkness continues towards the shoreline. Now let me take another clean brush and introduce you to the background, which I'm going to solve very quickly by giving you, this is called Naples yellow. It's a nice sunny tone, but with enough subduing in it that it isn't bright yellow. It's not grapefruit yellow. And it's a nice tone it's a nice color to use out on the beach. It solves many, many problems. It seems to be almost pre-mixed tone, which is very helpful, especially in a situation like I'm in right here, where you need a great deal of quick solutions to a problem to be able to make the point. I've just squeezed some white on the canvas to get a pale quality to the beach coming down here. And I'm now going to, before we are ready to close, I would like to get some really comprehensive study of this house in the water. Now I'm going to knife on the the blue of the water so that you can see how I'm going to handle the reflections of that building. I'm going to put it all on first, all the blue and the water first, and then I'm going to scratch off where the building is. Here's the mirror image of the building, and here is this is where the blue will stop. But I wanted to get that in there because it's essential for the color values that are going to come. All right, with a clean brush, I'm going to once again repeat this color down here. That's one of the tricks to remember. How do you remember that color? Well, mix enough on the palette to begin with. So here, coming right straight down here, as you can see, I'm going to run my shadow color all the way across. Then it's interrupted by the side of the building. Then here we come with some more. Is that a little dark? Yes, it's a little dark. Let me lighten that a bit. Lighten it somewhat. If you find the mistake immediately, good for us. It's the best way to solve a problem about mistakes. If you see the mistake, solve it right away before the light changes and there's another mistake. So dealing with the out of doors is always an enormous problem because of the change of light. And here we go, straight down from the side of the building is the white part, and then there is another one right here. There it is. I think that you can see logically that that's directly below the building. Don't make the mistake of not paying attention to that because you'll be in trouble. It will not make any sense. Now, because the wind plays on the water, it played on the water here and suddenly interrupted that wonderful reflection, which was practically still, although we're going to soften those lines just a little bit so that it really is believable that there is wind playing on top of this water. So we have here a wind disturbance on the surface of the water. We also have the little dark green arrangement here, whatever it may be, at a bush of some sort, and guess what? Directly below that, it is going to be reflected in the water in a most wonderful manner. It tells you immediately that this is water. Now, the illusion that we're doing, taking a perfectly blank canvas and transferring all this information, is the challenge of painting, and it is also the part that keeps me coming back again and again to do scenes that have this amount of interest to them. Now, I'm going to go directly below here and show you where those window reflections take place. I've never understood why windows do that, but obviously all related items are reflected in the water, including this door. And all you need is a slight suggestion. You do not need too much. Where's my fan brush? So that I can soften this particular reflection. It does not have to be that dark, that brilliant, or that distinct. It must be actually more indistinct than anything. So we have here now a new introduction of this pale color. I have enough on the palette left so that I can continue down here. The wind disturbance has not hit that part, but I want to give you a little bit more drama on this water condition here on the surface, because no matter how tiny a wave is, and no matter how calm the water is, every wave has its own shadow, which is why the water surface becomes dark. All you're seeing is millions of tiny shadows of waves on the surface of the water. This is what I call observance and learning how to see. I work from life because I'm interested in understanding what it is that I see. And what I see, a good deal of the time, is incomprehensible, but I've also learned not to question it. The tricks that the light plays, and that wind and sunshine and atmosphere plays, is something that if you begin to question it, you'll never be finished with the picture. So I paint what I see, which is solving many, many problems for this kind of painting. This is realism. It is not interpretive, it is not impressionistic, it is realism. carried far enough so that people will say, well, it looks like a photograph. Well, it doesn't look like a photograph at all. It has a feeling of a photograph. However, now the roof line, as you can see, is somewhere picked up here with a darker tone and lost in the thing, but it is nevertheless there. So with a final push to try to get the wonderful thing that happens in this darkness of this low tide, and you'll see suddenly how this shoreline, how the reflections are going to become very brilliant because of the dark shoreline. The dark shoreline is caused by the fact that the water has gone out and has exposed not necessarily mud, but wet places, and that's what I'm putting in now are the wet places. If you ever do go down to this area, I hope that you are blessed with the presence of possibly some clammers, because they do come down here, stand ankle deep in this water, and clam for cherrystone clams and quahogs. That's a little lesson in the botany of the area. We have here, as you can see, the introduction of this dark line here has given a brilliance to the reflection, which I believe is obvious to anybody who's carefully watching the progression of this picture. Now, the rest of it, in case I have to close, and I'm going to keep working until I can resolve this as much as possible. All of these colors are dark tones. Olive green, a touch of burnt sienna, some raw sienna, no black. I do not use black. Black is on my palette only for sketching purposes. If you use black, you will get a very dark and somewhat dead picture. Black has no color. It's made with, well, are you ready for this? It's made with charred animal bones, and it has a dulling quality which is to be avoided. So black is out as far as paint is concerned, and all the wonderful dark colors combined, namely the olive green that I have, alizarin crimson, raw sienna, burnt sienna, and all those wonderful dark colors are what are going to give you the darkness that you need. As I continue and I'm about to close the program, I hope that what I've done today has given you some information that you'll be able to use. Namely, once again, let me point out to you, the brilliance of the water is accomplished by the introduction of this very dark foreground. In detail, when this picture is finished, brilliant little pieces of stones and things that are catching the light and that are wet will manifest themselves on the finished product. I've enjoyed painting this landscape for you today. I hope you've enjoyed watching it. I hope that possibly if you do go out and paint, you can remember some of the things that I said. And so, until the next time I see you at the cable easel, this is Patricia Woodrow saying thanks for watching. Bye-bye.